The White House meeting between President Ramaphosa and President Trump in full glare of the media served to highlight the appalling failures of South Africa's ruling elite. The moment when Mr. Trump played Julius Malema chanting "Kill the Boer" in a packed stadium was particularly devastating.
Kill the Boer! The farmer! Shoot to kill! Yamaza!
Every decent human being in the world watching this knows instinctively that "kill the Boer, kill the farmer" is hate speech and criminal incitement to violence. SRF polls show that the vast majority of South Africans, including ANC and EFF voters, regard it as hateful and wrong. Everyone knows it is wrong, except President Ramaphosa, who has never publicly condemned the chant as hate speech, not even in the Oval Office when he had every opportunity and motive to do so. Everyone knows it's wrong, except the judges of the Constitutional Court, who just a few weeks ago ruled unanimously that "kill the Boer, kill the farmer" is neither hate speech nor incitement to violence. They even dismissed the right of AfriForum to appeal the decision, saying it was inconceivable that another court could hold differently. This judgment casts a shadow on the integrity and legacy of the Constitutional Court and makes a mockery of their role as the guardians of human rights in South Africa. The judges should hang their heads in shame. President Trump was right to highlight the moral aberration of "Kill the Boer" chant and the horrific farm murders. But he is wrong that this is only a white genocide. It is a South African genocide. As the head of COSATU, Zingiswa Losi, pointed out in the moment, offering as defense of President Ramaphosa, but only to make the case more damning.
There is no doubt about it that we are a violent nation. If you go into the rural areas where black majority are, you would see women, elderly, being raped, being killed, being murdered, and these are black elderly women that would be found throat slits, raped multiple times and all of that. And the problem in South Africa, it is not necessarily about race, but it is about crime.
Every South African knows that she is right, that violent crime savages black and white alike. The numbers do not lie. In 2024, 26,232 people were murdered in South Africa. That means that just over 70 people were murdered every day. To put that into context, more people are murdered in a single year in South Africa, a country of 60 million, than in the combined populations of nearly 1 billion across the US, EU, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. The total death toll of those murdered in 30 years of ANC rule is 653,758. Think about that number. 650,000 people who have been murdered on the ANC's watch. The Talmud says, to destroy one life is to destroy a world. Every day, 70 worlds are destroyed. Every day, 70 South African lives are brutally cut short. 70 families condemned to a lifetime of unbearable grief and loss. It is very painful and disturbing to share these statistics, but the only path to a better future is by having the courage to be honest about the failings of the present, to have the courage to acknowledge that what is happening in South Africa is a genocide. It is not a white genocide, it is not a black genocide, it is a human genocide. Every South African knows this. Now, thanks to the spectacle in the White House, the world does too. Every South African also knows that President Ramaphosa and his government do not care. To them, white lives don't matter and black lives don't matter. South Africans have given up hope of the government protecting them. The middle class who can afford it have turned to private security. Here again, the numbers are astonishing. In 1994, there was one private security guard for every police officer. Today, there are nearly 5. South Africa now has over 2.7 million registered private security guards, with 586,042 actively employed and only 185,000 police officers. The poor, who cannot afford private security, have in desperation turned to vigilantism. In 2024 alone, there were 2,790 cases of vigilante mob justice being meted out. That is 7 every day. This represents a government failing at the most fundamental level. The first responsibility of any government, the most basic obligation, is to protect its own people. That is non-negotiable. That is the foundation of statehood. And to its eternal shame, this government has failed in that duty. President Ramaphosa has failed in his duty. He has failed to protect South Africans. That failure was laid bare on the world stage, exposed in all its shame, on full display, in front of a global audience. As I watched the White House spectacle unfold, as I watched President Ramaphosa literally squirm in his seat, visibly uncomfortable, humiliated as President Trump accused him of genocide in his own country, I couldn't help but think, I'm not a prophet, and I do not presume to know the will of God. And yet, the thought kept crossing my mind. This moment, this humiliation, felt biblical. It felt like divine retribution. It felt like justice for a different, earlier sin, because Ramaphosa and the ANC stood on a different global stage and falsely accused the Jewish state, the state of Israel, of genocide, a lie, a libel, a defamation of an entire nation. And now, in front of the whole world, they themselves are being accused of genocide. This time, a true genocide, demonstrated by the cold, brutal facts of a murder rate spiraling out of control, the blood of countless victims on their hands, and their total inability to protect South Africans of any race or background. It felt like what our sages call mida keneged mida, measure for measure, a precise justice, a reckoning. And as that thought took hold, another verse came to mind. I kept hearing the words of Genesis 12:3. Those who bless you will be blessed, and those who curse you will be cursed. President Ramaphosa and the ANC cursed Israel, and now it feels as though they are being cursed. You can feel it in the air, in the sense of decay and despair. You can feel the weight of a divine curse settling on this presidency. One final word to President Ramaphosa. The shame and embarrassment you experienced in the White House, in the full glare of the media, as you were accused of grievous sins against your own people, is a small taste of what is to come when your soul leaves this world. Like all human beings after death, you will appear in the full glare of the light of truth before your Creator, the Almighty Himself, the only true judge. In the heavenly court, you will stand accused of presiding over the human suffering of all those who were murdered on your watch. The King of all kings will ask you what you did to stop the carnage, the genocide. What you went through this week is nothing in comparison. You were in the Oval Office in the presence of flesh and blood, merely politicians and journalists who are here today, gone tomorrow. You could spin and pretend and obfuscate, and you could squirm and even giggle and wait for the hell to pass. But before your Creator, who knows everything, you will not be able to fudge and avoid the truth. The truth of your leadership and your life will play out before you, and you will be held eternally accountable for every moment of human suffering you caused through your callous neglect, through your omissions and commissions. Live out the remaining days of your term of office with this final judgment in mind. And maybe then you can still redeem yourself and your long-suffering countrymen.